Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Liz Beecroft, and we're back with an episode of a FaceTime with MENTL.SESH. And I'm sitting down today with the plant doctor, an educator, and now a children's book author, Maryah Greene. How are you?
I am amazing. How are you doing, Liz?
I'm good. Give the people you do. So we've been connected for quite a few years, actually.
Yeah.
Through a company called Seasons was how I
Mhm.
learned of who you were and the work you're doing. And over the last couple of years, you've, just blossomed into this awesome businesswoman who, by the way, like if you're not following Maryah on Instagram, please do, because you have the funniest, like just commentary on everything. You're so real and down to earth. And I genuinely appreciate everything that you share. But yeah, give anyone tuning in a rundown of all of the things that you're a part of and involved in.
Yeah, you just introed the hell out of me though. I'm like the expectations are so high. Yeah, as you said, I'm known as the plant doctor and stylist. I'm a former educator, or I guess always an educator, former classroom teacher, and now author, which is so crazy to say. It's been officially like, oh my God, almost 4 months. But I wrote a picture book that aims to help support children dealing with loss and grief. And I used plants as the metaphor and able to tackle that really heavy and sometimes difficult topic. Um, and so I'm seeing all of the different facets of my life sort of come together. And it's so funny. Maybe you feel this way in New York, like the people that have like their train job and then they have their side hustle. You always think of those things as two separate. But I feel like for the first time in my life, they're all coming together and it feels so good. So I'm just so excited to share it. And like on social, of course, is where I share most things. But just it feels really nice because it's a tangible thing and I'm physically going places and interacting with kids. It's really nice.
Yeah, yeah. I saw the one reel that you posted where everyone was coming up and like picking out their favorite pages of the book. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's so heartfelt to just see the engagement and like how, and so we'll talk more about this in a second, but let's start with
Yeah,
talking about good things. So your book is called Good Things.
it
Um,
is.
Talk to me about the inspiration, for writing a children's book. Where did the topic, wanting to cover grief with like the themes of growth, kind of come up for you? Like what inspired that, and were there any influences that played a part in the process?
Yeah, for me, it was quite simple because when I was teaching in underserved communities, I found that I was experiencing the task of having to comfort and engage in children who had experienced trauma. And the one thing that I knew for sure was that I couldn't relate to that. I'd come from a very privileged family. And of course, that's relative, but I had just never experienced the level of trauma that these kids had experienced before. And so, the one thing you're taught, any good teacher will tell you, if you are trying to comfort a kid and want to be able to relate or empathize with what they're going through, the best thing you can do is find a book, because that just sort of serves as a moment for you to not only read together, which reading is amazing, but also for them to either have a window into someone else's life who's experiencing this or use it as a mirror to see their reflection, what they're going through. And so I knew I wanted to write a picture book about loss or mourning because I never found it in the classrooms that I was teaching in. I really struggled to not only relate, but also to suggest resources for kids and for parents. And so I don't know, it sort of felt like a natural. I think maybe it's like businesswoman piece of me that's like, "Oh, well, this doesn't exist. I'm just gonna make it." It just feels like a natural progression, and so I knew the responsibility that came with that, though, and so fast forward, I'm teaching, I'm doing my plant thing on the side. The plant thing blows up, it's getting tons of press. And I hear from a publisher, and they're like, hey, we would love for you to write a book about houseplants, teaching people how to keep their houseplants happy, how to keep them alive. And while I was super flattered at the opportunity and was like amazed, I also was like, I don't really think I have anything to contribute to the plant conversation. Cause like by the time you purchase my expensive ass book, you could have just bought a plant and experimented, was how I was seeing it. So I did say I am working on this manuscript of this picture book, and it's a bit of a heavy topic, but it is about plants. Are you interested in seeing it? Sent it over, and they ended up liking it. And so that was just sort of the timeline of how it progressed. But my work with plant care inspired or served as like the metaphor for me to tell this story about loss.
Yeah, I mean, I love how it's really this full circle moment for you, and it happened
Mm,
so organically where, you know, this opportunity was presented, you know, and I think for a lot of creatives too, like, you know, when we have opportunities that come knocking, we are at times we struggle with like kind of saying, well, this isn't really something I'm trying to do directly, but how about this idea, and present our own, you know, ideas and you know, projects we're working on that we're 100% passionate about. And
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to see like how it all came together and, you know, really full circle, giving you the opportunity to kind of merge all of your worlds into one. Sorry, I have a puppy who's gonna probably
No, I love that. I'm like, can we shout the puppy out?
Ivy, what's up? Come on, say hi.
Ivy.
Come on.
Hi, baby. Oh my God, so cute.
A
The
floof.
little nose.
A floof.
Oh, hi, Ivy.
All right.
No, please join. I need Ivy to be a part of the conversation. Um,
But
no, I completely hear you. And I have to just say too, I don't want it to sound like I had this mega like part of my brain that's like, no, pitch yourself. And that is not normally me at all. For context, I had heard from the publisher during June of 2020, the height of Black Lives Matter. And so all the hashtags going around about like Black in publishing and just like protect Black art. And there was just this moment of liberation, articulation, and also just like, I don't know, standing up for ourselves. And so I thought, like, I don't know, I had this moment of feeling like I could articulate what it is I wanted for myself when talking to this massive publisher. That's not normally me. And so I only shout that out to say that the context and the timing of which this happened, I felt like I had to pitch this story because all I was seeing on TV every single day was Black loss. And so I need to show up and promote this book and get it done as much as possible. Of course, it didn't come out until 3 years later, but like I think context really plays a part in why I needed it to be out.
absolutely. And, you know, even mentioning before how you said, like, you know, as when you were teaching, like, there were not any resources available, you know, for this topic, especially within, you know, the idea of like representation and inclusivity. And you're absolutely right. You know, well, I used to work for a foster care organization, and even finding just books for young kids to really understand these are heavy topics, you know, grief, loss, it's complicated. And even for adults to try and understand and process, you know, that experience for a child, I think, you know, including a visual component and an analogy, you know, to plant care is something that is so powerful because of that theme. You know, that is something they at a young age might not fully understand the whole context of grief and what that experience is like, but they can certainly feel that, you know, and being able to relate that to, you know, something that maybe might make more sense to them at that point in their lives, I think is fantastic. And the importance of, you know, visibility and just being able to see yourself in books and have an understanding of what Black loss might look like, you know, and how to process, how to navigate those experiences, because it is challenging. Grief is a very, very complex topic. I'm curious for you, like how was your mental health writing this book? Like because it is a heavy topic, you know, and you're doing something with obviously a great, wonderful intention, but you have to take care of yourself as well. So what does that look like?
I felt a lot of pressure while writing this book, and I would say it was probably one of the first projects where the pressure didn't come from the outside. It was mainly inside because, for one, no one knew that I was writing a book. And so I made sure that I had that privacy and space. But I think the pressure that I was feeling was that I'm taking on such a heavy topic and I'm writing the experience on behalf of young Black boys. And so I had this tension within me that was like, who am I to tell this story? Who am I to be the voice of this experience when I'm not a young Black boy? But then there was another piece of me that was like, well, I'm in a position to share this story, and I've worked with kids in underserved communities for so long, specifically Black boys. And so I would like to think that they would trust in me. I think I had to tell myself and sort of take myself back into the classroom, and knowing that my kids would be like, Miss Maryah, this is really good. You're doing a good job. And it's because you listen, and because you hear us, and because of all of those things. So I had to first validate that it was okay that I was telling the story, and then also empower myself to do it on behalf of them. Um, and not go down the hill of who are you to write this story? Because if I went down that hill, I think stories just wouldn't be told. And everyone has the right to tell a story. But if you're doing it on behalf of another group of people, you want to make sure that you're doing it justice and you've spent enough time and experiences with them to articulate that. So, from a mental health standpoint, I think I just struggled to give myself permission to tell this story, and equally um, giving myself this space to not adhere to deadlines, which is crazy. I know we all struggle with that. Of course, draft one is due, draft two is due, all of that. But I would have these moments where my deadline is in a week and I've planned out, I've made the cute little schedule on Canva and it's pretty and it's cute. And I wake up and I have nothing to write about. I have nothing to say. And then on vacation, or I'm at dinner with someone and it just pops into my head who the main character is going to be, and this plant needs to be this. And so, like, giving myself permission to have my own writing process was super, super important. And I think I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being able to give yourself grace in the process, because some days you will wake up and know that I'm just the quality of my thoughts today are not in line with what the
Mm.
goal for the day is, and then there are days where you might be, like you said, out for dinner or in the middle of something else where you're having these thoughts. And creatively, I think it's so important to like take those mental notes, keep a track of them, but speaking about that publicly and sharing that, like, creativity it doesn't just flow out of us. We have our bursts, our moments. And because of the intentionality and the impact behind this book, I can imagine like that level of pressure. So who was your support system like during this time? What did that look like for you?
Oh, I had so much support. And it's not the people that you think, because I kept it from the people that were closest to me, because I didn't necessarily want to be held accountable for deadlines or how's the book going, with the best intentions, of course. But I just know I don't operate well when people are expecting something of me. But the people that did know, my loving, amazing, supportive partner, Nick, he along the way has just been like, you carve out the time that you need to write. When it flows, and you need to honor that. And so that was very helpful. And my mom, I let my mom know that I was writing a book, but I also kept her sort of at arm's length, because, like all moms do, like, how's it going? Or can I see anything? And I just was like, this isn't that kind of party. Like, I kind of need space for this creative process. And then who else? I think just spending time with kids. They didn't necessarily know that I was working on like the book, but I would go and read like parts of this book in front of kids. I would like go to as many classrooms as I could. Like, that was very important. And then lastly, my two best friends, Natalie and Tati, they're both amazing writers. Like, they sometimes write for like Harper's Bazaar and Billboard and stuff. So I'm like, hey, can you like do the thing that you do that you get paid for on my little children's book? And they were there along the way, which was nice.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Any experiences, when you were reading to kids that stand out for you? Like anything, that was, just, I don't know. Sometimes you have those experiences along the journey that you're like, wow, like I can see the impact I'm making here. And it really does
Yeah.
warm my heart.
There's so many. It's so hard to pick. I would say my favorite two are before the book came out, when it was just in little sections and I would read to small groups. And I had sleepless nights and was so anxious about having to read the page where you find out that the dad passes away. I just was like, are they going to know that he dies? Are they going to be able to infer? Is this the right age group? And so I just was like in my head about it. But there was one group in particular, I read it to them. And I think it was the line of like, he knew the plants would become his, he just didn't think it'd be so soon. And it's like the background is like of the hearse outside and it's very dark and you get the context clues. And it was like, I don't know, like if you've ever like read a book to kids, they could give a shit about what you're reading until something happens in that book and they feel drawn and connected to it. You could have heard a pin drop when I got to that page. And it was almost like they just started like leaning in on each other and getting a bit closer to make sure that they actually heard what I just read. It was just this moment of like, oh, okay, that page is actually doing what I intended it to do. It felt really, really good to have that moment. And then to see that moment keep happening, I was like, holy crap, I think I've done the thing. That was the page that has kept me up at night for 3 years, and it's finally done.
Yeah, yeah, I can only imagine. And it's tough, right? Because I'm sure there's times where you're even thinking like, I don't want to trigger someone. I don't want, have
Hmm.
a bad reaction to this that can be harmful. Um, but it sounds like you've done an amazing job and are helping a lot of little ones out there who really, need to have a space where they can learn about this stuff and make sense of some of these really complicated and traumatic experiences.
Thank
Um,
you.
so another, you mentioned that you only told your mom briefly. I saw the video,
Yeah.
surprised your dad.
Yeah.
How was that for you? What was that like having, that experience, taking your parents to see your book in real life? And yeah, just
It
talk
was
about
it was everything I wanted it to be, but I also it's so funny because of course like you see it via social media. It was one of the first times where I had recorded something without the intention of like, oh, I hope this performs well on social media. I just very much wanted to document this moment because I'd been waiting on it for 3 years. But oh my God, I woke up that day and like my heart was in my throat. I just was like, oh my God, I'm going to tell my dad. Is he going to get it? Is because he had zero context that I was even working on a book. And so I don't, it's weird. I feel like I blacked out during that moment. I was just so overcome with emotion and just like the look in my dad's eyes. It was weird. It was one of those moments where, because my dad is one who celebrates all my big accomplishments. He celebrates me all the time, but he's just such a proud dad. And so I think for him to physically hold something in print over the past few years, I've designed apartments and I put plants places, like not physical things that he can show off. Of course, he's shown off newspapers and things, but I think the look in his eyes and seeing him physically hold the thing is one of the best moments of my life. And yeah, I was just like, okay, well, now you have to actually read it. I hope you like it. Like, there were just so many moments of like, oh, wait, it's not over yet. And I just wanted his, not reassurance, because I knew it could have been the crappiest book ever and he would have loved it. But I wanted to know what he thought because, again, he's the closest Black male in my life. And so I'm like, I need you to read this. And I want to know how this holds home for you because his dad wasn't around in his life much.
from context clues, your dad works in sports.
Yeah, he's a
Okay.
WNBA and NCAA referee. So he's in a
Okay.
different state every day.
That's a lot. I mean, I, in my private practice, I primarily work with athletes as a therapist. And, the idea of like mental health within sport is a whole, interesting topic. It's something that's not typically talked about. So I was even curious, like,
Mm,
how did your dad react to the, topic of grief and like, mental health and wellness, given like his involvement in sports and being, in so heavily involved in a community where like you're told to suck it up and just push through and not really focus on your mental well-being when in fact your mental health is a huge part of how you perform.
yeah. No, it's interesting because I feel like my dad is quite literally the manifestation of save it for the locker room or save it for the pillow, like whatever the phrase is. And it's like literal in his life because whatever's happening out on the floor, you get it done and then you go back to the locker room and then you assess your mental state. And so over the past few years, I think my relationship with my dad has enabled us to like, the more that we've grown together, we've been able to have those conversations. And he works in such a competitive industry. Like there aren't too many basketball referees at the professional level in this world. And so not only do you have to be good, you've got to be really freaking good. And then you've got to be better than the person next to you. And so I think we both work in professions where we're constantly having to prove our worth and value every single day. And so we're able to have these conversations consistently, especially through like the means of this book, where we're constantly talking about the state of our mental health and like just what it feels like to have to like to sometimes feel like you're putting a value on your existence because
Yeah.
what you do is so rare. I think we both struggle with that. And I feel like I got a lot of the genes from my dad of like, be exceptional, be the best of the best, keep going, never give up, all of those things. But I think we're now in a phase where we're talking about be all of those things, of course, but what does it look like to give your all and it, quote, not be enough? What does it look like to just be tired from doing the best that you could that day? Just like reassessing what the conversation looks like. And it's been really nice to have with him, especially because he's getting older.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit too about being a plant doctor.
Yeah.
What give us a rundown. What does a day in the life look like? And what are some parallels you see between plant care and just overall mental wellness?
Yeah. Being a plant doctor is like, it's a weird job. I don't think I've ever said that out loud. It's so weird. Like, I feel like it's the equivalent of getting unsolicited like nudes. I wake up and check my email and it's just unsolicited plant pics of dead, sad plants and people just at wit's end. And I swoop in and like to think that people are viewing me as the Superman of their problems. And so while that feels so good to be able to give people like a place of like comfort and solace, um, I struggle like with my mental health because it's so time sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not there within 2 weeks, it's a matter of this plant's life or death. And so I like to think that there's only a few of those that will come in every day, but I could be hit with 5 of those requests in a day, or it could be 10, or it could be none. And so trying to like, I have to separate my love for the plants and for wanting to help people with what is actually reasonable and sustainable to take on. Um, so being a plant doctor is amazing. And I feel like I really understand and appreciate so much the point when people get to the point of messaging me and are like, I don't care what it costs, just want you to come here. You have got to be at wit's end because you've Googled, you've tried everything. Like, no one likes to spend money. So by the time you reach out to me, you're looking for the last hope. And I want to be able to be that for everyone. But along the way, I've had to tell myself that that isn't my responsibility. My responsibility is to show up in the best way that I can if I have the availability and mental space to do that. But I'm not required to take on any work that comes to me. And I think that's going to be an ongoing lesson for the rest of my life.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, owning your own business. That is really hard to find those boundaries, not necessarily for other people, but
Mm,
for yourself. How do I maintain a work-life balance that is healthy, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Like, you have to
mhm.
also actively create a balance and pour into the other aspects of your identity outside of our roles in our careers. So what are some of the ways and strategies you do that, like as far as self-care, and when you think of your identity, what are some things that people might not necessarily know about you that you consider part of your identity?
I love sitting in bed with my iPad on, watching some trash TV, like absolute
Yes.
trash. That just fills my cup over. Um, I like, there's small little things I do like that, but I think even like my self-care efforts, I think I've realized about myself, they weren't working initially because they were very reactive. I'd be burnt out and I'd go spa day and like, I deserve this, I deserve that. And it wasn't financially sustainable, nor was it like emotionally and mentally sustainable. So I I took some time, spoke with my therapist about it, and we were like, okay, well, it sounds like we can build some things into the system at the beginning and along the way. And what those look like are, I don't give clients my phone number. I can either get a work phone and they can have that number, or it's all through email. And I've just decided there is nothing within a matter of 24 hours that could go wrong with a plant where you need to contact me right now. And so I'm like all email. And then I've just added in a couple more like extensions as I've grown. Like I have an assistant who's consistently available. And so just like protecting my peace, because I've been that person on a date with my partner or like with family where I'm like, so sorry, 1 second, I need to get this. And I think it took me seeing it in movies and seeing it be done to me by other people where I could point out, ooh, that's not what I want. That is not why I left teaching my overworked and underpaid job to live like this. I'm living the exact same way. And so I've had to bake in small little things. I guess I call them boundaries along the way. Um, and it's funny, you don't realize it, but once you set the boundaries, I know you're so afraid at first to set them in the beginning, but once you set the boundaries, you're essentially just telling people how you want to be treated. And one of two things will happen. people will honor that and they're just the most lovely clients and you have a great working relationship, or they don't honor it. And thank God you found out in the beginning before there was a transaction of money. And so the system, it just like, it works itself out and people show you who they are in the beginning, and your boundaries work for you. They shouldn't be working against you. And I never realized that from the beginning.
Yeah, that is so, so important. And I love that you bring that up. I see that a lot with creatives or just any business
Mm,
owners, really, is like knowing the difference between like the audience or the clientele that you want to attract, who
mhm.
respect your boundaries, who, understand that you also have your own personal life and needs outside of the work that you do. And you're very, very accurate. Those are often the most lovely clients to work with, and the ones who
Yeah.
respect our boundaries are, it's a nice way to create a clientele that makes your job enjoyable and easier to take on day in and day out. um Very cool. So with like, would you consider plant care in general now being self-care for you, because it is also work? Like, how do you kind of, I get asked this question a lot, like, your therapist, like,
Yeah.
going to therapy is technically self-care, and I'm like, yes, but it's also like, I kind of know what the therapist is doing sometimes. I'm like, I know
Yeah.
what you're doing here, but you still got
So
me.
it's the Spider-Man meme, I bet. You're like,
Yeah.
No. It's so funny. So my mom's a therapist at a high security prison. And so same thing. She talks to her therapist and they try to therapize her. And she's like, no, not today. um, the honest answer is I don't find plant care enjoyable when I'm doing it as an extension of my job. So, like, for example, the other week I needed to repot all my plants. I've been putting that crap off for like months because I just was like, I saw it as a task and like, I'm not being paid for this. Like, who's going to pay me to repot my plants? Like, that costs money. I think I've been able to like see it as a job. But I've had to set the boundaries with it where it's like, if I'm doing anything with my plants, like repotting them or pruning them, I'm not filming it. It's a completely separate part of who I am and what I do. And I just have to keep them safe. My plants upstairs in my bedroom, those don't get filmed with the exception of a really nice price tag. And like, I just need a new plant that I haven't shown before. But like, again, I think it's like a part of the boundaries conversation. I don't necessarily find I'm looking around at all my plants that need care. If you're wondering what I'm looking at, I'm like, oh shit, I should probably do that. Um, but yeah, I think every time I went to water or care for a plant in my house and I wasn't recording it, I felt guilty because it was like, ooh, this is a moment or opportunity for content. And you start to think and see things in terms of content and opportunities. But I knew I didn't want that for myself because then I just felt like I was working backwards. Yeah.
You can almost lose sense of like the, what is your why answer. Oftentimes, it can be a form of content, and most likely is always, but at the same time, if the intention of you doing that isn't to produce content, it just can create resentment, and frustration. And it's
Mhm.
really important to be cognizant of those boundaries, and that is a great example of a boundary, knowing that like, I don't need to make this about content right now. It could just be for me, and pouring into my own passions. You
Totally.
also, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no. I also just wanted to shout out too, since we're talking so much about boundaries, like organically. I think I, for a really long time, thought that people just went into things or experiences and set boundaries. But I feel like it's so unclear and people don't really talk about it often. You don't know what boundaries to set until you get the uncomfortable feeling. You
Mhm.
have to be somewhat like relatively violated in order to know I don't want to feel that again. And I did not know that through all these mental health conversations that are being had in the world. I just was like, why do I feel so uncomfortable? Why are people blowing up my phone about plants? Why do I feel exhausted about taking care of my plants? And it wasn't until I felt that extreme like anger and resentment that I was like, oh, I need a boundary. And so I just kind of want to shut that out because I feel like that's not a common way of understanding that, like where boundaries are born. You know what I mean? I'm sure you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Boundaries are very complex. There's
Hmm.
a lot of different types of boundaries, whether it's physical, emotional, environmental boundaries. spiritual boundaries, financial boundaries, you name it. Like there's all different ways that we can set boundaries. But I also, believe that boundaries can look different depending on, the person or people you're around. Everyone has different life experiences, different personalities, different environments that we might be in. And it takes a lot of, experience to know, well, does that feel good? Does that not feel good? And sitting with that discomfort sometimes and saying, well, why doesn't it feel good? What about that made me feel a way that I didn't necessarily want to feel or like to feel? And what moving forward, how do I adapt from that? And I think that is the part of growth. Growth is never comfortable. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. You're probably in standstill. And to grow, we have to feel those uncomfortable emotions to have that aha moment of, like you said, to know when to set boundaries, to learn those lessons. And our boundaries are always changing, depending on the season of life that we're in. So that's what makes it, there's no like rule book of like, these are the boundaries that we set in life. And it is very confusing. And I think
I feel like, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I've been looking for the rule book for 28 years. Like, where's the book that it seems like some people have and I didn't get? Like, is it genetic? And like you said, there's no rule book. It doesn't exist. You develop the boundaries and you know what feels good and what doesn't necessarily feel good over the course of like experiences, but also just trusting your gut, and when you feel icky about a situation.
Something we talked about, before we started recording too, was just like the ickiness we've been feeling in New York these past couple of months. How is it for you, living in the city, being a business owner in the city? I feel like post-COVID, for my experience, like New York has changed a lot for me. I still, I obviously still love the city, but it's not lighting, like it's not motivating me as it used to. I'm not feeling, I feel more drained than I feel recharged when I go out now. What has your experience been like?
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. I feel like New York when I first moved here and I was like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I was, what was I, 22, going to grad school, got my first apartment. I'm like, New York is where it's at. And I still absolutely love New York, but I think to your point, post-pandemic, I can't help but to just feel and see the wealth disparity, like just growing farther and farther apart. It's like you either are like making ends meet and faking it till you make it in New York, or you come for money, you print money, all of the above. And I never truly felt that way. I think it's a result of the pandemic, but I just am like, this can't be the New York that I moved to. And like, I've only been here 6 years. So I can't speak from a place of what is New York and like the broader scheme of things, but it's just been so interesting post pandemic because I don't get the same like recharge of energy from the city. It's like the phrase of like the city that never sleeps sounded so inspiring and so fun and so electrifying. And now I'm just like, girl, like I want to go to bed. Like, what do you mean? It just feels so completely different. Yes, we're tired. The city needs to sleep. Turn the lights off. The Con Ed bills are too high. We're tired. It's enough.
We can't afford the Con Ed bills at this point because of inflation. God damn it.
It's sick. It's so sick. So it's like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, so anti-New York, of course, because this isn't my home and I can't stand when people move somewhere and they're like, oh, I hate it here. But I am saying that New York is normally known for having this electrifying energy, and a lot of the people in my life and in my world just feel sort of exhausted and drained by I don't know, like what it's become lately as a result of the pandemic. And I can't really find the words to describe that, but it just feels different.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, last question, and this is going to be kind of a fun one. What are some of the really shitty TV shows you love to watch?
I thought we moved past that in silence.
Nope, we're airing it out today.
Okay, if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it. I will go back and watch Flavor of Love like nobody's business. Like it's real bad.
I love that.
Rock of Love, I Love New York, Bad Girls Club. But then of course there's like the buzzy ones that everyone watches, Love is Blind, all of those. Like I just find comfort in toxicity because I think the only downside of being in tune with your mental health is that it gets boring. I just want a bit of drama,
Yeah.
but I don't want to be a part of it. So seeing it on TV, I'm like, ooh, she needs help. Ooh, she probably needs to talk to someone.
So it makes
But
you feel better about your own life at times when you see the drama unfold on TV.
totally. But it's also like they say that I think it's mostly people who identify as women who it's mostly women who find comfort in like murder mysteries and things. I
Mm,
think there's probably psychologically something
yeah.
to that with these toxic shows where I'm like, oh, how nice. They're gonna get divorced. That has nothing to do with me though. Like I don't know what that's about.
Yeah. I think it's a form of escapism, for some, and
Mm,
being able to just not be, just visualize another type of lifestyle and see what that might look like, which
yeah.
is, yeah, it's interesting.
Interesting. Whenever a therapist tells you that something you said was interesting, you're going to be up at night. And I just want to note that you just said what I said was when my therapist says that, she's like, "Oh, interesting." I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh shit. I'm the one of her 1,000 clients that really just pushed it."
so funny. I actually never even like considered that from like the other end of it, but if it makes you feel any better, I'm a diehard bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise. I love all
Are
that stuff. Oh
you?
yes. It's like my Super Bowl is like watch, and oh, the Golden Bachelor right now. I don't know if you're watching that, but
I
like
saw that.
it
I
is
think I decided
pure.
that's going to get me into it. Is it good?
It is pure. It is, I love it. It is the sweetest thing. Like, yes, you have to watch it.
Okay.
So
Is
endearing.
it I can't watch a show unless it's all out because I need 12 hours to
Oh no,
escape. Is it all out yet?
not yet.
I'm gonna
No.
let it roll out and then I'm gonna
We're
have a
almost at
24-hour.
hometowns. We're all, yeah,
Oh
so
shoot. Okay.
hometowns. We're getting there. So I give it another
Okay.
like 4 or 5 weeks and then it'll be out. So
Okay. Okay.
I'm wrapping up.
Sounds good. Yeah, like pro mental health, me spending 24 hours on the iPad watching Golden Bachelor. Yes.
All right, what's next? Anything coming up? Anything you want to shout out, promote, give the people who are tuning in, I know where they can find you, where they can reach out if they need some shitty TV recommendations or some plant care.
Yeah, I guess I talk about the shitty TV recommendations on my Instagram for sure. So it's at green.peace. That's the same with TikTok and all the things. My website, Your Green Piece, is also in the bio. Oh, and I just launched a book tour. So it's not like a traditional book tour where I'm going to all the big stores and things. I'm coming to you. I'm coming directly to schools. So if you're a parent or a teacher and you'd like for me to stop by to your classroom and lead story time and read good things, it's completely free. We're just asking you to commit to promoting the tour in a couple of ways, but it's all on the website. So I'd love to come and read story time if you'd like to have me.
Oh yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your time and for
Thank you.
answering all my questions, my burning questions about mental health. And everyone go give her a follow. And just, have a nice peaceful page because that's what happens when you follow good people on social media.
Yes. Thank you. No, thank you for all the good questions. And oh, yeah, you can get good things anywhere they sell books. I should be selling the book. Yeah.
Yes,
Go pick up good things. You can get it from your local bookstore, indie bookstore, Amazon, Target, etc. But yeah, go pick it up. Thank you for having me.
of course. Thank you.